Well, hello there. Welcome to both my YouTube channel and to another video. If you're a long-time viewer, today I'm gonna be talking about a very important core feature of the game, the leveling up system. First, I'll talk about its ups and downs, then give a suggestion, and afterwards explain more on why I think these changes should be at the very least considered. If they get implemented, that'd be amazing, but I won't get my hopes up too high for it, as usually my videos don't get a lot of views, and they probably never make it to the eyes of CPG itself. Who knows, maybe some of them do watch my content. Well, regardless. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, starting with the good things about it. First of all, this system allows you, well, to gain levels, of course. You play game, every map you play, it awards you XP. You get XP from various things like pressing buttons, doing daily challenges, surviving the map, solo bonus, near drown XP boost. It's like 10 XP for if your air reaches a certain point, which is considered a near drown experience. And there's other factors like map event bonus, XP weekend bonuses, rescue missions give XP, lost pages give XP, and so on and so forth, basically. In other words, there's a lot of sources for gaining XP. However, there isn't really much sources where that XP applies. Well, apart from the leveling system, it only applies into the flood pass, which requires XP to earn items. Well, flood pass is the general consensus of me making this video. Kind of. It does tie into this a little bit in a certain way. So, what do you really do with all of this knowledge? Well, first of all, the average player will not be really focusing on level ups or rebirths overall, because they're pretty damn hard to achieve, and they kinda have no benefits. Yeah. So, back on topic with the good things about it is, well, more specifically, the rebirth system itself. The good things about it are it provides something you can work toward. Well, there is like almost no updates to the game. And it exists, basically. Well, there is also one more benefit. You get +1 jump per level up until a Rebirth 5, but let's be honest, what are you gonna do? 5 jumps, 6 jumps, 7 jumps, etc. You can boost the lift once, and then spend another hour or two leveling up again, so you could do that one more time. Especially if you don't have the VIP Game Pass, then it's a dreadful experience, and I'm sorry you have to go through that. Apart from that, there isn't really much to rebirthing, honestly. You do get badges, but let's be honest, are way too hard to get. Way too hard to get. It's a lot of grinding, a lot of mind-numbing grinding, honestly. I myself have reached max level. I'm the only person to have done so legitimately. There were a couple exploiters who did it. They were all banned by now. So yeah. Alright, let's move on to the flaws. Even though I already mentioned some of them. The first flaw is obviously the insanely difficult to rebirth. When you rebirth, the XP requirement to level up actually gets harder, which is one of the main issues with the rebirth system in general. Normally you'd think rebirthing would give you some sort of benefits, or buffs, or bonuses. Nope, you don't get anything like that. You only get one extra gem per level up until Rebirth 5, and you get buffed level up requirements. That's all you get. Basically, nothing, in other words. And the badge, I guess, depending on which rebirth you hit. But apart from that, you really get pretty much nothing. The second, it's very demotivating to start from level 1 every time. I don't know about other players, maybe they enjoy this kind of feeling where you have to start over from 0 again. I personally don't really like that kind of thing. I've played a lot of different variety of games over the years, and well, a lot of them featured leveling up systems in all kinds of shapes and forms. But my most preferred level up system is gonna be the idea I give in this video. But yeah, basically, my most preferred level up system is simply you level up endlessly, basically that. And instead of resetting your level back to 1 after a rebirth, for example, you would just keep going up, 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 and up. That kind of idea, basically. It would get harder as you progress, but it would feel so good to be high level and actually recognized for your efforts, instead of people being confused what this number next to your level means. Honestly, I'd prefer being level 1257 or something over this level 100 times 30. I would just prefer a clear indication of how far you gotten into the game, rather than a rebirth feature, which most games usually make it really easy to rebirth, in fact. So normally you'd think rebirths in FAQ aren't that difficult to get. Well, no. Rebirths in FAQ are the hardest to get out of any game that actually features rebirthing as a feature. And it does the exact opposite of what most other games do. They make it easier to get it more and more. FAQ does it harder to get it more and more. Yeah, kinda demotivating, isn't it? Anyways, moving on to other flaws it has. Well, I already mentioned the third point, which was the level up reward and the badge for rebirthing not being enough, simply. I think it's quite underwhelming. Also briefly mention that I don't really like having a level cap. You may argue, why would you not want to have a max level in a game? Well, to tell you simply, the real answer is, what do you do when you get stuck on max level, but you still want to play the game and play it actively. For example, you have two options. One, you keep playing as a max level for God knows how long without any satisfaction of the level ups. Or you create an old account and level up from scratch again, which is also just as demotivating as being as max level. You know, this whole restarting from zero is really the biggest issue for me. It's the most demotivating thing about leveling up overall. Even back in the day when I was still getting my very first few rebirths, like rebirth 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, I'd usually be motivated to grind for it only at like level like 90 something to level 100. That's the most motivating point. The least motivating point was, well, levels 1 to 30 or something like that. It was exhaustingly boring to start over from level 1 again. I'd rather have seen level 523 than a Rebirth 5 level 23. Like, I'm serious. It would be a lot more fun seeing higher digit levels than seeing this Rebirth thing here. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one feeling this way, but maybe I'm not the only one feeling this way. Who knows? If you have any thoughts, leave in the comments. And, well, I already briefly mentioned that rebirths don't really give any boosted gains, which was another point I pointed out. And the last thing is some players don't even know that you need to reach level 100 to get a rebirth. You know why this is the case? It's because hardly anyone is ever at level 100 or anywhere near it. Most players are usually stuck between levels 30 to level 80 or so, like the middle ground. Since most players are usually stuck between around that point, you will hardly ever know what level you actually need to reach to actually rebirth, because the game doesn't really explain anything about its core mechanics. Because this game is a teacher by trial and error, basically. To learn maps, you have to, well, play them, fail at them, and learn from your mistakes when you get the chance to play it again. And that's the same exact way you discover new features like sliding, air diving, zip lines, etc., etc. I mean, granted, zip lines probably are the easiest to discover because you just jump into the bubble and it just takes you wherever you have to go. But such things like air bubbles, for example, I've seen maps in FE2CM that put an air bubble somewhere far away from the swimming section, and I would just not know there is an air bubble. I would jump into the swimming pool with acid and I would drown immediately. Like, yeah. That kind of map design kind of sucks, I won't lie, but it is a possibility in some maps, you know. In some maps, it could even be possible without an air bubble, despite there being one. If you're incredibly early at the pace of a map, for example. Like magmatic mines, air bubble could be optional. If, well, you use shortcuts and you get there before it turns into acid. That's for just one example, pretty much. So, the game does kind of need to be more transparent as to how features work. If anything, I'd probably suggest like having a tips type of thing when you load into a map, for example. I don't know. Quick example. I'm solo, so it doesn't really matter. But for example, when you load into a map, there's like a tip at the top of your screen, for example, that appears saying you can air dive by pressing this or this key, for example. That'll be really useful. Really handy. It also could be used to explain the lore behind the game, so on, you know. Nothing like really mad impressive or anything. So, but this video is not about that, okay? Gotta get back on topic, so time for my suggestion, which I did kind of briefly mention what I really like. This might sound pretty hard on most players, probably. They might not agree with it after being used to it for several years at this point. But I would replace rebirths with a normal leveling system, where you just continuously go up levels instead of starting from level 1 every time. I already kind of explained why I like that, so I won't do too much explanations. Make level ups be infinite. That's a given, basically. You'll understand more why later. Make them scale up very slowly, so you can get a lot of the earlier game levels fast. For example, level 100 from level 0 would take you a week to reach as an average player who plays only in pro servers and can hardly beat crazy maps. I'd say that's a pretty good middle ground for levels. I genuinely think that levels 100 to like level 300 should be pretty easier to achieve, for example. Or in case if we reboots are not replaced, and reboots 1 through like 5, maybe 10 wouldn't take longer than a month to get, basically. You know, that kind of thing. Award prizes for each 100 levels milestone, like an item series, for example. Blood sword variants of varying colors or textures. However, there would be like a last milestone reward, which would be at like level 1000. Granted, level 1000 wouldn't be equal to Rebirth 30, just so you know. It would probably be equal to about Rebirth 20, maybe. Probably, depending on how mathematically hard it gets to level up at a certain point. But yeah, also that +1 gems per level up thing would also apply. At level 101, for example, you'd get 6 gems. At level 201, you get 7, and so on and so forth. And in this case, your level up gems would not be capped to Rebirth 5 as the maximum amount. They would keep going up by 1 for each Rebirth you get. I mean, honestly, what kind of downsides would this possibly have anyways? Especially for the free-to-play players. I mean, most players will probably get VIP Game Pass either way before they start grinding like that. So I don't think that extra gems would hurt them, considering that VIP Game Pass already has a gem cap you can reach per day, and there also being an actual gem cap of maximum gems you can have. You can see I have 100,000 gems, barely over it. Basically, the cap is 100,000. You can slightly go above it if you earn more gems in a streak while it's lower than 100k. Once you die, all those gems are credited, so you can slightly go above it. Of course, such things like codes and, well, buying gems do go beyond the cap regardless. It's the way it's designed. Also, gifting gems too, that also goes beyond the cap. So yeah, you don't get scammed in those directions. But you stop earning from gameplay. So in order to actually earn any gems, you have to go below the cap again, and then go beyond the cap somehow. That kind of way. Which isn't really optimal. Anyways, also would like to add one more point that I didn't write down onto this segment, in that is that every 100 levels you would also, well, get a certain amount of coins or gems, like a bonus. Like, you know, the Flat Pass has this final tier, well, premium reward basically, for the free tiers. So it's like an additional thing you'd get alongside an V item for a set level milestone. Also, these milestones could be given out at about every 50 levels in a form of currency. Or hell, even more often. Levels 25, 50, 75, and so on. Of course, if they're given out more often, they would be a lot smaller in size. So, like, level 25 would give you, like, I don't know, 50 gems maybe, 100. Reaching a level of 100 and only being awarded every 100 levels, however, would probably give more like 3, maybe 400 gems and 1,000 coins or so. I mean, at a later point in the game, you would still, well, not really feel the effect of those 400 gems. But, I mean, it would be still pretty handy if that was an existing motivating factor to level up. Because at least some of the poorer players could afford to buy items like, I don't know, the Galaxy Sword or the Rainbow Sword, or hell, maybe even afford the Gem Trophy. Yeah, there's no way that this item can be afforded without, like, either grinding with VIP Game Pass forever and ever, or buying gems. It's unlikely that you can get it from playing free to play. There's just no chance. So yeah, also the final point in this whole thing, before I yap on forever and ever, scaling. The scaling for each level up would be plus 50 XP per level, starting at level 1 with 200 XP required. The reason I chose this plus 50 XP thing is it would actually like increase very slowly, so that the earlier levels would honestly be just a breeze to go through. It wouldn't be really like problematic or anything to gain 100, 200, maybe 300 levels. You'd only like really notice it starting to ramp up in difficulty at about level 500 probably, which is where a level up would be like, what, 15, maybe 16,000 XP. I'll probably do math later on this part to calculate the exact number, but just know you probably won't require more than 20k XP per level at that point, so just keep that in mind, I guess. So, and it go on infinitely, by the way, so each level up would still be getting slightly and slightly harder. So there is a possible chance you could reach like a level 1000 and you have to get like 40, maybe 50,000 XP per level. Again, I'll probably do math later for this. If I won't be lazy, I'll probably link it in the description too. If I don't forget. Anyway, on to the YAP session, which is probably gonna last. Oh god, I probably wrote down a little too much. Anyway, better get started before we lose ourselves in that track of time. Alright. In my opinion, the current level up system is simply underwhelming. Rather confusing and doesn't look impressive enough. Also, I believe that having less numbers in the UI clogging up space could be another benefit, like looking at 100 times 30 here is kinda dumb. I did kind of express this earlier. I don't know why I still read it out loud anyway. Alright, I am aware of the initial decision for Rebirth to be for the original idea for adding Rebirth was because of demand back in the day, mostly due to the influence of simulators adopting the Rebirth feature. However, FE2, as you know, did not follow that same idea. Instead of giving you power-ups, benefits, or increased gains, it just made it harder for no reason. It kinda serves no purpose as it is right now. But with my suggestion, I hope it can change in the future. Anyway, it was like really unfortunate when people would ask if I was getting like more gems or XP or whatnot. And they were really disappointed when I told them that they get nothing and it just gets harder for no reason. Oh man. I mean, I can't lie. It's kind of bullshit that this is how it's been for so long. I mean, I don't know why this idea was not addressed a lot sooner. Probably nobody cared enough to actually do that. I might be the first one to actually care so much. Too much. Who knows? Anyway. To me, the idea of there being a max level was what really drove me to reaching it. Yeah, I did it 3 times in total now. Rebirth 10 level 100, Rebirth 15 level 100, and now Rebirth 30 level 100. And, well, I've been stuck as max level for, in total, I'm taking up all the exact amount of periods of time that I was as max level. I spent 2 whole years not being able to level up at all. And for the foreseeable future, probably, this is gonna keep increasing in amount, probably for years to come. I mean, I don't really have the kind of motivation needed to grind level ups again. But I mean, I still would like to at least make some form of progress to like at least justify me spending time playing the game. Because I still do enjoy playing the game. I really want to play it more. There's just like few reasons to do that. There being like special items you could earn from leveling up would be really nice. Some people are motivated enough by that. Like the aforementioned leaderboard system from several years ago could also be like part of leveling up, for example. Like level up several hundred times and you get an item, like the leaderboard trophies, the so-called new ones, I guess. I don't know. It's just an example. I don't really know if that's what the real best idea for it is. Who knows? Uh, the only real benefits to rebirthing in comparison to ordinary leveling up is that there's a special effect you have when you press the button to rebirth. And that's basically it. This is a nothing burger, basically. I mean, if the effect was like really impressive, it would be cool. But the whole effect is just your XP bar shrinking downward and still returning to level 1. Rather disappointing if you ask me. Still, we did celebrate tons of rebirth parties the same exact way, so it's still something in comparison to nothing. Although it could be a lot better. Anyways. Yeah. Rebirthing has become way too common and it's a lot less like interesting to see. Most people probably don't even care enough to actually invite other players to see it. They just click the button, click rebirth, and be on their merry way. Back to the game, I guess. I mean, this was also a thing back in the day too. Most people didn't really have that understanding that you could actually invite your friends to see it, your milestones. I first learned about this when I got Rebirth 3. Well, actually, I was Rebirth 2 at the time, so I just watched a group of friends like wait in the lobby, stand in line, and just watch as the player presses the Rebirth button. I mean, I don't know, something about that experience just like felt left butterflies in my stomach, basically, type of feeling. It felt so genuine and comforting and kind of interesting, to be honest. And that tradition has kept up till this very day, pretty much, although it has really shrunken down in size. Like, really shrunken down in size. Until 2022, it was growing in size. After that, less and less people were making these rebirths and rebirth parties, etc. Because rebirthing got really, really hard. Most players were not motivated to grind, simply didn't want to really rebirth anymore. Most of them quit. They do sometimes show up to someone else's rebirth who still plays the game. You've seen countless videos of mine where I have showcased rebirths of certain users. The past year, it was mostly just the same 3 people, not including my own rebirths. So yeah, that's pretty much what it's turned out to be now. It's a cool tradition, but I don't know. I don't think it's spectacular enough to actually want to stick to the rebirth system still till this day. Alright, anyway. Let's move on to some examples of other game level systems. Or, well, a little bit more and in detail, like examples. Why higher levels seem a lot more impressive than rebirths do. Let's take Arsenal for example. If I see a level 600 player in the game, I already know that my booty is getting whooped so hard it's gonna fly out of the atmosphere, okay? I already know that much on the spot, just from seeing his level. Because to reach that kind of level, you need an extreme level of dedication and skill, obviously. Hell, even if you're not the best player of all time like me, you're still halfway beyond average skill and you're probably gonna be winning almost like every game. But if you see a level 50 or something, you can literally kind of switch off your brain and just you'll still be winning. That kind of feeling, you know. Levels do showcase your experience and skill with the game, but in Arsenal's case that is more prevalent because the game is all about skill. In FE2's case, it's not nearly as much skill based because this game doesn't constantly push your skill further and further or require you to learn certain like techniques and other stuff to beat maps. If anything, as long as you follow the crowd, you can probably beat most of the maps. The real challenge comes when you're trying to actually solo maps far beyond your difficulty range. Again, these are two very different games, so I can understand if you don't agree with my idea on this one. I mean, if you see a Rebirth 3 player, for example, you know that he's at least capable of beating Crazy Plus maps, right? At least somewhat consistently. A question mark. Well, that isn't always the case. The average Rebirth 3 to Rebirth 5 player is probably capable of beating a handful of Crazy Plus maps, but they are far from being consistent at them. They'll beat like 1 every 10 Crazy Plus maps they play, which isn't a lot, but for them it's still really difficult to do so. Meanwhile, players of below Rebirth 1, they quite literally don't even stand a chance of beating one. If they do, they're kinda lucky, I guess. Well, it all varies really from person to person. If you're playing on an alt account under level 100 with the skill level of a Rebirth 5, you will beat Crazy Plus maps without problem. That is kind of the point. Yeah, basically. Levels do indicate experience with the game. They allow either your enemies or your allies to know, at least in some way, if you are familiar with the game and or somewhat good at it. You may not be the best player or top of the skill tree, but it still gives you at least somewhat of an expectation for what that player is capable of, right? I mean, there are some outliers who are still able to reach really high levels with like minimal skill. I know some people like that in both this game and other games. I won't yap too much on about this. Let's get back on topic. Why infinite levels? There's a good reason why. First of all, you can keep leveling up and earning gems. That's one thing. Another thing is because of exploiters. You know, if there is a max level cap, they can inevitably reach it, join public lobbies, and pretend they did legit. No one will suspect a thing because someone else has done it so a long time before. You won't even be suspicious of it. However, in a case where said exploiter decides to attempt reaching the max level when there isn't one, he would get too far ahead of the highest level player, which would result in him getting banned a lot more fast and much easier because he couldn't hide it away anywhere. That would be kind of funny, honestly. Especially if your stats become viewable in a future update by any chance, which I hope they do. I think they will. This would be a lot more comical to actually look at their stats after seeing their level. You would see like 10,000 crazy maps beaten with one death in between. That would be so funny. And watching that guy getting banned is even funnier. I did get the luxury of watching one of the Rebirth 30 exploiters getting banned. That was pure gold in terms of comedy. Anyways, there is only probably one tricky challenge when it comes to this. It's the curvation of levels. That could be a difficult thing to do. However, luckily for us, we have stats, which already display your total experience. So, if, for example, if you do the math, how much XP takes to reach a certain level, let's say level 600. Depending on how much XP you got, it would put you at level 600. Well, in my case, I have 69 million experience points. That would probably put me at like level 1500. Maybe a little higher. I don't know. It's just a rough estimate, basically. But yeah, your levels wouldn't just vanish into thin air and you wouldn't start from level 1 again. That's what I mean, basically. However, the tricky part is still programming this feature and then actually converting it. I have no idea how hard that might be. I have zero programming skills or knowledge. But I'm pretty sure that someone as talented as Crazy Blocks, considering he managed to create things like a timeline system, like he managed to solve Roblox bugs that Roblox themselves couldn't solve for years. You know, you gotta give him credit. He's probably one of the best Roblox developers you could ever find. However, the only downside is that he's a passion worker, basically. If he doesn't feel any passion, his workflow really stagnates. It's kind of like that. He could achieve greater heights, but there is something stopping him from doing so. Which is unfortunate. But it is what it is. It's not the end of the world either. Anyways, this suggestion could also be applied to the rebirth system, sort of. But in rebirth case, if rebirths remained, the conversion part isn't important anymore. However, I would at least remove the scaling, because rebirths getting harder as you progress is not a good thing at all. I won't say that rebirths need to get easier with each rebirth, because that makes no sense in FE2's case, since it doesn't provide any benefit whatsoever. I just think it should have a preset amount of how much XP you need, and it should always require just that set amount of XP. Yeah, the amount of XP I think a single rebirth should have is like probably 600,000 XP, maybe 700,000 if generous. Well, basically at a point where the highest level only requires 10,000 XP at most per level. Kind of like back in 2018 to 2021, where it was 10,000 as the max level. As the highest level per rebirth XP. So yeah, it doesn't require too much hard like grinding to rebirth. Most grinders were able to rebirth 2 to 3 times per month this way. Average players nowadays could probably rebirth once or twice a month as well, given how there's a lot more boosting features, like times 6B weekends and so on. But you have more benefits. I think that's really handy. This video is gonna drag on so long. It's gonna be kind of hard. Anyways. Alright. Alright, time for some comparisons between games. Alrighty, let's begin with comparing FE2's rebirth system to Assassin and MM2. First off, the systems are really similar, but they have their differences. Starting with MM2 though, it has 10 prestiges you can earn. They're average in difficulty to get. It'll probably take like, what, maybe a week per prestige if you play a lot. If you don't play nearly as much, maybe once a month you would get the prestige. It's nothing too crazy. It won't take like an insanely long time to get prestiges in that game. Hell, you probably might even not notice how quickly you're progressing through it. That game is really, a level of system in that game is pretty much a ghost. You will only notice it when you look at the server leaderboard, basically, that kind of thing. Other than that, you probably won't even pay attention to it. You get nothing for prestiging, unfortunately. It's easy to get to hit max level and get stuck on it forever. I myself have reached max level in MM2 6 years ago. I originally started playing this game in 2016. The same day, basically, that I created my first Roblox account, which is still this account that I still use today. I reached Prestige 7 in about 8 months, maybe. So, yeah, Then a certain update happened. I got tired of the game for a while and quit. Then a few years later down the line, I just said, fuck it, I'll finish the game for good and never come back. That's pretty much what I did. Also, I had bought a Game Pass which boosts XP gain a little bit. I bought that Game Pass already after I had over 7 prestiges in the game. It hardly even helped, honestly, and it's now just a waste of a Game Pass. It's the VIP Game Pass. The reason it's a waste is because you can't level up further, and the only real perk it gives is 50 coins per round instead of 40. But you'll be really lucky to actually collect those 50 coins. And there's no other perks than that, pretty much. This is an MM2 video, so I won't be yapping too much about it. Alright, let's move on to our next comparison, which is... Presently, this game is dead, pretty much. It's no longer getting updates, it's pretty much abandoned. If you've played Roblox years ago, you probably know this game. Especially if played in 2016, 2017, or 2018. Back then, this game was on the front page still. It's called Assassin. The game is about, like... You know how MM2 has the Assassin mode? So yeah, he basically stole it from this game. Because MM2 and Assassin were at a war with each other. Some knives in the games might actually look very familiar as well. I won't mention which ones because I couldn't be asked to do a comparison between those two games at the moment, since this video is about FE2. Alright, basically. Assassin also had a prestige system. However, unlike MM2, it had 50 levels per prestige instead of 100. And each prestige was automatic. You didn't have to press any prompt button to do it. It just automatically did it for you as soon as you reached the required XP. You would get a untradeable item. Untradeable. Meaning, if you prestige, you would get a knife, and you'd keep that knife basically forever. So long as you kept playing the game, it would always be there in your inventory. And you would get one for every prestige until prestige 10. After that, on prestiges 11 and higher, you'd get 1,000 coins per prestige, which is a way better reward than the stupid knives they gave. Because granted, those knives weren't the greatest looking ones and not very desired. However, those coins you could get a lot of good stuff, really cool stuff. I still have exotics, mythics in that game till this very day. However, I don't know what they're worth now anymore because the game is dead. Pretty much gone. Anyways, the core principle of this is MM2 had a max level cap, whereas Assassin does not. So people in Assassin could reach as high of a level as they pretty much desired. And another benefit is it didn't scale in difficulty either. So actually neither game, neither MM2 nor Assassin had more increased requirements to prestige. So yeah, basically you could pretty much level up infinitely and you could do it at the same pace as every other prestige prior to it. And that was the greatest part about it. Now, I mean, now there's one last comparison I want to make, and that is Arsenal. Again, a point about Arsenal is you start at level 1 and you can infinitely level up to levels 1000 plus if you want to. I think the highest level player in the game currently is like level 1800, I think. I could be wrong, there could be higher. I don't know. I'm only level 676 at the moment. So, wanna know how long that took to reach? I started playing the game in April 2019, but I really got into it in like October/November. So yeah, it's been 7 years to reach level 600. Yeah, pretty long time, huh? Granted, I did play the game casually. I didn't really grind it to insane lengths that other people did. I'm also not the greatest player in terms of skill, as because I was playing on a crappy device which couldn't go past 100 FPS, which is detrimental for a game like that. Anyways, leveling system. This is where my core idea stems from Arsenal, because their leveling system is very simple. It just slowly gets harder to level up as you go up your levels. The first 100, 200 levels will probably like take you, I don't know, 2 months, maybe 3 months. Only after that it will start actually getting pretty difficult to level up. Basically, a level 100 will take you like about a week to reach. Level 200 probably like 3 weeks. Level 300 will take you like a month and a half. Level 400 will take you like 3 months. And you know, it keeps going up, something like that. So basically, if you play regularly, you'll probably level up quicker. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much how progression works there. It slowly gets harder and harder. Very slowly. Well, even at level 600, I only need 16,000 XP to level up. And at level 600, I only have 8 million XP or so. And Arsenal you get far less XP and less frequently, so I'd assume like at least double the amount of FE2's XP is worth what Arsenal's XP is worth. So like 20 million in FE2 would be like 10 million in Arsenal. Something like that. Maybe even more FE2's XP than Arsenal's. That is only considered that most players grinded FE2 solo. In Arsenal, all of your XP gain depends on all of the other players. If you were to play FE2 only in multiplayer, however, that's where your entire XP amount would probably be worth at least half of Arsenal's XP, basically. So, like, let's say you have 16 million XP earned in FE2. It would be worth, if you did only multiplayer, it would be worth the 8 million XP for sure. Definitely. No doubt about it. But I would probably say it's a ratio of 3 to 1 at minimum. So like 24 million would be worth 8 million in Arsenal. Something like that. So yeah. I don't know by how much exactly the levels get harder in Arsenal by. All I know is that it doesn't really get really all that difficult. You only really start to notice how slow it is to level up at like level 500 or so. That's when you start acquiring an XP amount where it takes you at least 2 hours of playing to get. Granted, that XP amount is like fair enough. It can be faster if you're good at the game. I'm not very good at it, so my amount of time to level up is probably a lot longer than the average player who is at that skill level. So take that with a grain of salt. Basically, what I'm meaning to say is that an FE2 level 600 would probably require probably like about the same amount of XP as level 600 in Arsenal. But just keep in mind that in FE2 levels would be a lot easier to get still, because you can get a lot more XP faster. It wouldn't be like getting insanely difficult too quickly. So it could be a little harder depending how much you play, but I'll probably do a math session after recording this. Anyway, so yeah. Now, the reason why Arsenal's leveling up system is so satisfying, it's because you don't restart from level 1 every time, and because even by playing a little bit every time, half an hour or so, your XP gain is consistent. You gain about 200 to like 600 XP per round on average, regardless of your performance. Of course, if you can get at least 15 kills per round, you will get 200 or more XP easily, which shouldn't be too much of a struggle. But yeah, in FE2's case, however, it is a lot more different, because playing higher difficulties grants more XP, whereas playing lower ones barely gives any at all. So your skill level does quite matter if you want to progress faster. So pick your difficulties wisely, I guess. And if you adopted the same kind of leveling system, I think it would be a lot more engaging, to be honest. Like, for example, people who have been stuck Rebirth 2 for so long, they would probably turn into level 500s by now, easily. Well, maybe not level 500s, but like levels 400 would probably be where they're at, based on their experience. So yeah, it could motivate them a little bit to actually get levels. I don't know. They would feel a lot more progressed than they currently do, that's for sure. My throat is going a bit sore. I didn't grab any water, so give me a sec and then we'll continue. Alright. Now that I'm back, there's additional stuff I wrote down before I started recording this. A friend of mine earlier today sent me a screenshot in DMs where the thoughts of considering that private servers might not reward XP in the future. Again, there is no confirmation this is what is gonna happen. But in case of speculation, let's assume that it does happen because of all these other farmers, or there's like a restriction where you need to do something or purchase something in order to be able to gain XP. I suggest adding more XP sources from playing in public servers, such as plus 10 XP per each player survived in a round, or overall increasing the raw XP gain from maps like each difficulty awarding plus 100 XP. So easy difficulty would be 100, normal is 200, hard is 300, insane 400, crazy 500, and crazy bills would be 600. I mean, I don't think this would be a real big problem, considering that compared to solo, where you get every button, you pretty much get 100 XP bonus on top of all of that, basically. But if it were to be disabled, public servers would need a small buff to like rival the same XP rate gain as soloing did. Considering how hard it is to level up as is, I think this would be a very useful addition. Again, if it doesn't happen, I mean, I'd still love to see it be added anyway. It would make playing in public servers an actual option, not just for fun, basically, that kind of thing. You'll be more locked in on actually trying to beat the maps, actually win the rounds, and so on. And a lot more players would actually like improve at the game if the better players actually help them a lot more, you know. Anyway, also because most players actually enjoy playing multiplayer far more than soloing. Soloing is actually pretty boring, I can't lie. Having done it for years and years, I'd take multiplayer any day of the week, so long as it had a similar XP rate gain as soloing. I'm not joking, that would be the best thing ever. Also, map event buffs could be reduced slightly. I mean, that is optional, honestly, but for balancing purposes, so that map events aren't spammed for bonus XP every time, their bonus could be lowered. In worst case scenario, removed completely. Don't ask me why. I personally don't really like map events. Not because I'm an XP hungry fool, but because I simply don't really enjoy playing them, to be honest. Alright. Alright, I'm just gonna read this paragraph out loud instead of trying to reword it somehow. Alright, it starts like this. I'm not thinking just about myself with these ideas. I just think leveling up is simply underwhelming and deserves more love. These ideas are simply meant to attract more people to level up, because as it stands now, it's way too tedious to progress to earn a rebirth milestone badges. Trust me, a lot of people would gladly take the opportunity to earn those badges if they weren't an insane grind fest to obtain. I'm also aware that I am probably not qualified to speak for the casual players on this matter. But then again, It likely will never be reaching max level anyway, so might as well just make it infinite. So that those who want to can level up without getting stuck, and those who don't want to grind really hard can still feel a sense of progression, but not playing nearly as much. The good part about Rebirth originally was that at least they didn't get increasingly harder. After Rebirth 15 came out, leveling up became twice as hard, and when Rebirth 30 came out, it got 4 times harder than Rebirth 15 was. Something that gives almost no benefit, that was very unfair to both the casual players, who perhaps stopped playing because their progression was not moving forward much, and grinders too, who didn't want to grind 4 times as much for what originally wasn't even remotely as difficult. An average player gains about 200 to 300,000 XP per month. A single rebuild by itself requires over 1 million XP in most cases, which would take a player of average skill around 4 months to get the rebirth on the lower end of the spectrum. Like rebirth 3, 4, 5 perhaps. Yeah, stuff like that. Higher end rebirths, however, require like 2 million XP almost. It would take like 8 months to a year or so if they consistently play at the same amount of pace. If they consistently get 200,000 XP every month, they would probably get the rebirth in like a year or so, maybe a little longer. That really depends. But yeah. In other words, I want to shrink that process down to where you only have to deal with hard level ups really far into the game. Or if rebirths remain, then them not taking longer than 1 month per rebirth for average players. I think that's pretty much a good idea, honestly. It might be because level ups are really tedious that most players really don't find enjoyment in replaying the maps. I could be completely wrong though. Even if you don't really care about levels, still, a faster sense of progression, which slowly gets more difficult, is actually a lot more engaging and a lot more addicting than rebirths. Rebirths just straight out remove all motivation to play the game after you click that button. Like, seriously. That effect is really demotivating. Seriously. I won't yap on forever about this because this video is already insanely long. So, yeah. I really wish this idea did become a reality. Again, I'll try to send this idea to Kozak. I don't know if he will consider it or not. At the very least, I'd like to hear his thoughts on it, since he's the man in charge and he's the one who decides what's gonna be adding and what's not gonna be added to the game. I just feel like it's the perfect time to do something like this because right now there's a exploiter problem with auto farms and private servers non-stop. Plus, most players are not really obtaining those badges, which they clearly do want to get for that feeling of completion, you know? It looked really cool if they could also get this 108 out of 108 badges, you know? The only thing stopping them is the rebirth ones. I mean, they would be content with just them being removed as well, but that'd be a waste. That would just turn leveling into a complete obscurity. And just a lost concept of time. Anyways, If you have any like criticisms, feedback, or your own idea, feel free to share it in the comments. I'd really appreciate it if you did. And well, I do wish you a good day. Thank you for watching till the end. I know you're exhausted probably of listening to this monotone voice. So yeah. Bye bye.